In the modern world, we often credit science labs for genetic breakthroughs, but 10,000 years ago, a quieter revolution began that changed the future of humanity. Early farmers weren't scientists, but they were the first genetic engineers. Without knowing DNA or chromosomes, they shaped nature with astonishing precision. They selected, bred, and transformed wild plants into supercrops over generations. This story starts in the Fertile Crescent modern day, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Here, wild grasses became wheat, and tiny seeds became life-sustaining crops. The agricultural revolution wasn't just about food, it was about survival. Hunters and gatherers started settling down, forming the first permanent villages. Farming brought predictability, but it demanded innovation and experimentation. Why plant the bitter barley when the sweeter one grows better? Why wait for nature when humans could bend it to their needs? These choices were subtle, but they changed entire ecosystems. Selective breeding became a natural form of ancient biotechnology. It was slow, yet powerful, generation by generation, trait by trait. What emerged were crops more productive, nutritious, and resilient. They weren't just growing food, they were crafting civilization itself. The rise of agriculture created surpluses, which allowed cities to emerge. With cities came writing, trade, religion, and armies, the seeds of empire. But it all traces back to the ancient farmers and their genetic mastery. This is the hidden story of how humanity's first supercrops were born. A story of selection, experimentation, and patient transformation. It wasn't magic or myth, it was early science in action. Let's explore how these ancient innovators shaped our genetic destiny, and how their legacy still feeds the world today. Ancient farmers didn't have microscopes or gene maps, but they had keen eyes. They observed which plants survived droughts, pests, and poor soils. Over years, they saved seeds from the strongest and most productive plants. This simple seed selection was humanity's first genetic tool. Through this, early humans guided evolution without even knowing it. They bred plants, not for wild beauty, but for usefulness and stability. A barley stalk with more grains was saved and planted again and again. Slowly, traits accumulated: bigger seeds, easier husking, better taste. This wasn't random, it was intentional and strategic selection. These farmers noticed tiny differences and exploited them over time. Wheat that shatters and drops its seeds, replaced by one that clings for harvest. Lentils with fewer toxins, chosen over bitter, harmful ones. Farming was both labor and laboratory. Fields became experiments. Over time, these practices created new plant species not found in nature. Domesticated plants became genetically distinct from their wild ancestors. These differences were inherited generation after generation. Genetic drift and selective pressure rewrote nature's design. The knowledge passed only what to plant, when, and how. Trial and error over centuries formed a kind of collective science. Communities became genetic curators, preserving desirable traits. This early bioengineering laid the foundation for all later farming, and while it looked simple, the genetic consequences were profound. It was the beginning of humanity's manipulation of the gene pool, not with tools of steel or code, but with intuition and time. The earliest supercrops weren't exotic, they were everyday grains. Wild emmer wheat and barley were among the first to be domesticated. In the wild, these grains were small, tough, and easily scattered. Early farmers noticed the plants with plumper seeds and stronger stems. By replanting these, they slowly transformed wild grasses into golden crops. Emmer wheat became the ancestor of modern wheat varieties. Its seeds stayed on the stalk, making harvesting easier and more efficient. Barley was adapted to grow in poor soils and changing climates. It became a staple in early diets and even in ancient beer. These crops had to be tough, surviving drought, pests, and bad seasons. By 6000 BC, cultivated wheat was vastly different from wild wheat. It had more calories, was easier to store, and yielded larger harvests. The changes weren't just physical, they were genetic. Farmers unknowingly selected for dominant traits over generations. The result, a reliable, predictable food source, civilization's fuel. This transformation was invisible but revolutionary. Each harvest was not just food, it was genetic inheritance. Ancient grains became platforms for breeding even better varieties. This opened doors to population growth and settlement expansion. More food meant fewer famines and more time for innovation. The genetic reprogramming of grains powered the ancient world. Today's wheat fields carry the ancient fingerprints of those farmers. The supercrops of old are still feeding billions today. And it all began with careful selection and patient planting. This was the real dawn of genetic manipulation. While wheat thrived in the Middle East, other regions created their own supercrops. In Mesoamerica, early farmers domesticated a wild grass called teos. Through careful breeding, it became maize or corn as we know it. Maize was a genetic marvel completely different from its ancestor. The tiny, hard kernels of teosinte turned into juicy, large corn ears. It took centuries, but Native American farmers achieved a stunning transformation. Maize could be dried, stored, and transported, a perfect crop for civilization. In Asia, ancient farmers did the same with wild rice. They selected varieties that grew well in flooded paddies. Rice became the foundation of Asian diets and empires. Like wheat, it was bred for yield, taste, and ease of cultivation. Over time, rice adapted to different altitudes, climates, and conditions. From China to India, farmers became expert rice. Each region modified the crop to fit its specific needs. In Africa, millet and sorghum were refined through the same methods. These grains were drought-resistant and vital for arid climates. In South America, the potato was domesticated high in the Andes. Early Andean farmers bred it to resist cold, pests, and disease. Across the globe, a pattern emerged: farmers as genetic engineers. They didn't copy nature, they redesigned it. Their selections shaped nutrition, economy, and culture for millennia. No two maize or rice strains were the same, each reflected local knowledge. Genetic diversity exploded, offering resilience against crop failures. Human innovation was written into the DNA of every crop. This was a global phenomenon with local genius at its core. Ancient farmers developed several practical techniques to improve crops. One was seed saving, choosing seeds from the healthiest, best-producing plants. Another was selective planting, only growing crops in the best soils and climates. They also practiced crop rotation to maintain soil fertility and reduce pests. Some civilizations used grafting, joining parts of two plants to combine traits. This method was common with fruit trees, improving yield and quality. Crossbreeding different plant varieties helped create hybrids with desired traits. Farmers observed how offspring plants differed and selected accordingly. Irrigation systems were built to control water, improving crop survival. Terracing hillsides increased arable land and reduced erosion. All these methods enhanced natural processes, guiding genetic change. Ancient knowledge was empirical but highly effective. Farmers adapted to challenges by trial, error, and observation. They didn't understand genes, but they manipulated heredity. This bioengineering was slow but cumulative, creating lasting impact. Each generation added refinements, increasing crop productivity. Tools like sickles and grinding stones improved harvesting and processing. This technology allowed farmers to experiment with new varieties. The combination of tools and knowledge sparked agricultural In Mesopotamia, sophisticated seed catalogs may have existed. Scribes documented planting seasons, seed types, and yields. This early record-keeping supported systematic breeding efforts. Such ancient agricultural science was the foundation for later innovations. It shows human ingenuity long before modern genetics. These early genetic engineers shaped the course of civilization. Domestication fundamentally changed plant genetics in profound ways. Wild plants evolved to survive in nature's seeds scattered by wind or animals. Domesticated plants evolved to rely on humans for propagation. Traits like non-shattering seeds, uniform ripening, and larger fruits were selected. These traits increased harvest efficiency, but reduced natural seed dispersion. Domesticated plants often lost natural defenses like bitter toxins or thorns. Humans replaced these with cultivation and protection methods. Genetic diversity within crops decreased as selected traits dominated. This made some crops vulnerable to diseases or environmental changes. However, it also concentrated useful traits, increasing yield and quality. Domestication caused gene mutations, insertions, and Some gene changes were spontaneous. Others were due to human pressure. Scientists today study ancient DNA to understand these changes. These studies reveal the evolutionary footprints left by early farmers. Crops like wheat and maize carry domestication genes controlling key traits. Some changes are so significant they define the species today. For example, the tough rhizis in wheat prevents seed loss during harvest. In maize, kernel size and arrangement differed drastically from teosyn. Ancient domestication shaped modern plant genomes and biodiversity. Understanding this helps modern breeding and genetic engineering. It also highlights the importance of preserving heirloom varieties. These varieties contain genetic reservoirs lost in industrial crops. Domestication was a double-edged sword, gaining productivity but losing balancing these factors is key for future food security. The legacy of ancient genetic engineering is alive in every grain we eat. While modern science gets credit for genetic engineering, farmers deserve recognition. They were the first to understand heredity practically, without formal science. Their innovations emerged from necessity and observation over millennia. They transformed chaotic wild plants into stable food sources. These early biotechnologists shaped ecosystems, diets, and cultures. They were skilled experimenters, adapting crops to diverse environments. Their knowledge was passed down orally or through simple records. This practical wisdom formed the foundation of agricultural societies. Without their efforts, cities, civilizations, and technology would not exist. Ancient genetic engineering was a collective, iterative process. It involved cooperation among communities and sharing of seeds. Farmers exchanged varieties, spreading innovations across continents. These exchanges enriched global agriculture and genetic development. Their work enabled population growth and social complexity. Crops became cultural symbols, tied to rituals and identity. The power to shape genetics gave humans control over nature's bounty. This was humanity's first step toward biotechnology and genetic science. Recognizing this history reframes our understanding of innovation. It also honors the ingenuity of forgotten ancestors. Modern biotechnology stands on the shoulders of these pioneers. Their legacy inspires sustainable farming and genetic research today. By respecting ancient methods, we learn lessons for future food systems. They remind us that innovation often begins with simple observation. Their work is a testament to human creativity and resilience. The genetic transformation of crops triggered societal changes worldwide. Reliable food supplies supported growing populations in urban centers. Cities like Uruk and Jericho flourished thanks to agricultural specialization emerged. Some people farmed, others built, traded, or governed. Complex societies required record-keeping law and organized religion. Written language first appeared to track grain storage and trade. Agriculture reshaped human diets, replacing hunting and gathering. Caloric intake increased, supporting larger brains and longer lifespans. Dietary shifts influenced health, culture, and social organization. Crops like wheat and rice became staples, defining regional food surplus allowed time for art, science, and technology to develop. However, farming also introduced challenges: disease, inequality, labor. Dependence on few crops created vulnerability to famine and crop failure. Social hierarchies grew, sometimes oppressing farmers or laborers. Yet, the overall trajectory was toward civilization and progress. The agricultural revolution was humanity's most transformative leap. Genetic engineering was central to this transition from nature to culture. It was a slow, cumulative process, one that laid the groundwork for history. Today's global food system still depends on those first supercrops. Understanding their origins informs sustainable agriculture and food security. It reminds us that human innovation is deeply rooted in the past. The genetic legacy of early farmers connects us across millennia. Their work planted the seeds of civilization itself. This is the story of ancient genetic engineering and its lasting impact. Modern genetic engineering builds on ancient principles of selection and adaptation. Today's scientists use gene editing to improve crops faster and more precisely. CRISPR and biotechnology owe a conceptual debt to ancient seed savers. Yet, ancient methods emphasized diversity and resilience, often lacking today. Industrial agriculture relies heavily on monocultures and chemical inputs. This increases risks of disease outbreaks and environmental degradation. Ancient practices like seed saving and crop rotation offer sustainable models. Heirloom and landrace varieties maintain genetic diversity lost in modern crops. Preserving this diversity is critical for adapting to climate change. Ancient farmers' adaptive strategies teach us to work with nature, not against it. They highlight the importance of patience and observation in breeding. modern biotech can complement traditional knowledge for better outcomes. Integrating old and new techniques may lead to sustainable food security. Farmers worldwide are reviving heritage seeds and organic methods. These movements echo the wisdom of ancient agricultural innovators. Understanding genetic history guides responsible use of gene editing. It emphasizes ethical stewardship of genetic resources. Respecting the legacy of ancient genetic engineering fosters collaboration. This approach benefits small farmers, biodiversity, and ecosystems. Ultimately, it promotes a balanced, resilient food system for future generations. The ancient story of supercrops inspires a sustainable agricultural future. It reminds us that progress combines innovation with respect for nature. Learning from the past empowers us to face modern challenges wisely. The journey from wild seeds to supercrops continues today. Ancient farmers were humanity's first genetic engineers, shaping nature's blueprint. Through observation, selection, and experimentation, they transformed wild plants. Their efforts created supercrops that fueled civilization's rise and expansion. Wheat, barley, maize, rice, and others became pillars of human society. These crops supported population growth, urbanization, and cultural development. The genetic changes they engineered still define modern agriculture. Understanding this history reveals the deep roots of biotechnology. It honors the ingenuity and persistence of our ancestors. Their work teaches us about resilience, adaptation, and stewardship. Ancient genetic engineering was a silent revolution with lasting impact. It laid the foundation for science, technology, and global food systems. Today, as we face climate change and food insecurity, this legacy guides us. We draw on ancient wisdom to develop sustainable and equitable farming. The journey from wild seeds to modern supercrops continues. Each harvest is a reminder of those first patient genetic innovations. By respecting this history, we connect past, present, and future. Ancient farmers changed the world with simple yet profound choices. Their story is one of human creativity, survival, and progress. It inspires us to innovate responsibly and sustainably. This is the untold story of how farmers invented the first supercrops, a story that shaped humanity's destiny and nourishes us still. Thank you for joining this exploration of ancient genetic engineering. May it deepen your appreciation for the food on your table, and may it inspire curiosity about our shared agricultural heritage.